Hello, everybody. We got some gappers joining us in the room. I think most of you know me by now. I'm Jazz. I'm your community manager, and I'm going to introduce these two amazing humans in a second. But I'm going to drop a little question in the chat if I can get it to copy and paste. Here we go. So what are causes you're about? Want to give back to during your gap year, or learn more about whatever. You can take that question however you want. It's just a starter question to get everyone in the room kind of sharing what they're interested in discovering on their gap year. So feel free as you come in, just drop that in the chat. And Marissa, you're first on my screen. Do you want to give a little intro to who is Marissa?
Sure, certainly. My name is Marissa. I currently am working for an organization called Katimavik. We're a national organization in Canada. And we provide a program called the National Experience. So it's a 5.5-month program. Ooh, someone's heard of Katimavik. Awesome. It's always fun to hear. We offer this 5.5-month program that's for youth aged 17 to 25 years old. And essentially you go to 2 different communities within that 5.5 months. And in those communities, you do volunteer work, about 30 hours a week of volunteer work in each community. So not a small amount for sure. And then beyond that, you learn about a bunch of different competencies, life skills. You get to manage a house, and you live with up to 10 other participants. So obviously, you're going to leave with some lifelong friends as well.
I love that. So you get the independence of living away from your parents and making awesome new friends that are like-minded while getting to do things that are beautiful and give back to the community. Amazing. Fantastic. And Lauren, would you like to give a little introduction to who is Lauren and who is OG?
Yeah, for sure. Hello, everybody out there on the internet. My name is Lauren. I work with an organization called Operation Groundswell. I mostly do sort of marketing communications, but more importantly, the thing that OG does, or Operation Groundswell, is connect travelers or like curious people who are really interested in traveling in a way that's meaningful and connects them with communities and like activists and sort of really incredible leaders in communities around the world to see what they're doing, see the challenges they face, and sort of see how we can engage as visitors to the places that other people call home. So we do travel, we do backpacking, and the goal is to do it in a way that is thoughtful, responsible, and works in a whole bunch of like volunteer experiences, travel experiences, adventure, to sort of give you this idea of what is happening in that place on the ground and what community leaders are doing to sort of inspire change in their communities. So we go to lots of different places around the world, mostly sort of in the global south. So South America, like Peru and Ecuador. We're in Guatemala. We've got programs in India, a lot of really cool partners in Southeast Asia, Thailand and Cambodia. And then we're running a really cool program this year in Tanzania with some awesome partners there. So that's sort of high level what OG does and why we do it. And we were sort of born out of this idea that volunteer travel can be something that is really impactful for the person who's traveling, and unpacking sort of all of the nuance and sort of this sort of complication that comes with a traveler coming from someplace like Canada or the States and going somewhere where they aren't an expert and really sort of taking leadership from community leaders there.
Awesome. Amazing. And I'm sure that anyone who's in the room that was at Jigger's keynote yesterday remembers hearing the name Operation Groundswell and that amazing film that he did in Peru. So if you have questions after even just Jigger's keynote, gosh, it was amazing. Feel free to just ping Lauren here as well. And I'd love to actually dive into this question of voluntourism, because it is something that, and a lot of gappers are not totally sure how to identify if an opportunity is ethical, and is working towards a long-term goal of sustainability and actual social justice. I was one of those gap year students who did a program that was like, I was sold a dream, and it was an amazing experience, and I'm talking about it, gappers, tomorrow in my keynote. But it was unethical. It didn't make any sense for me to be there. There was definitely skilled people on the ground that could have been doing that role. So how does a gapper identify what is an ethical opportunity that they should move forward with? Marissa, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah. So I think one thing that could be really important in making an ethical choice on which organization you're doing your gap year with is the transparency behind that organization. So, for example, if they're asking you to give money to take part in this experience, being able to know where that money is going is really important. A lot of organizations that might be unethical will ask you for a pretty large sum and not have the information on where that's going, if it's going back to the community that you're helping. So knowing that and being able to look into the organization, have the background on that is, I'd say, one of the more important things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think transparency is like the perfect, I feel like it's the word of our generation, because we're like demanding it from all brands and organizations. And when it comes to something that can be honestly detrimental to a community, if it's, approached incorrectly or done mindset that is coming from like white saviorship aspect, or like, we have to really think about our place in global development. So I think that's really, really powerful, and knowing where the money's going. Know where the dollars are going. So important. Beautiful. And Lauren, what would you add to that around kind of how do a gapper can know if it's an ethical experience or not?
Yeah, I think the money is a huge one. So I'm super on board, definitely back that, and the transparency. And I think just like adding on to that a little bit, don't be afraid to ask that question. If the organization is actually comfortable with the way that they're spending their money and the way that they're sort of using it, they will answer your questions. So I would say, yeah, just don't be afraid to like ask organizations, and then maybe think twice if there's an organization that isn't being honest with you or isn't being straight or isn't giving you a good answer. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would add that I think is super important is trying to understand a little bit more about the relationship the organization has with the communities that you're visiting or volunteering at. So a lot of it is like, it might not be super obvious right out front what that relationship looks like, but a lot of it might come through in like the marketing, the way they talk about these organizations, the way that they highlight the work they're doing. Like, are they creating sort of a space to uplift the work of the people on the ground and the communities that they're serving? Or are they sort of centering themselves in that narrative? Are they speaking about the things that they do to help the community, as opposed to what the community is doing to sort of, address whatever challenges they might be facing? So I think trying to understand a little bit more about the relationship between the organization and these communities and organizations can be a tricky one, but I think it's just really important if you want to get a good feeling about like that truly ethical, truly thoughtful volunteer work that will have an impact.
Amazing. And I'm curious, what does that look like on the ground for OG and Katimavik? Also, I want to mention to anyone who's in the room, OG, like just so that there's a clear difference, like Katimavik is locally in Canada, so that would be experiences within the country, and OG is outside. So if you're looking for both, either a local or international, this is just an opportunity to think about what is out there for you. So Lauren, if you want to start this time, what is that on the ground for an international experience? How do we learn from locals?
Yeah, super good question. Also very complicated, but a good one. So I think Operation Groundswell, as I sort of touched on at the beginning, was sort of founded on this idea that assuming that we can solve somebody else's problems just because we come from a certain place or have a certain amount of wealth or whatever it is, doesn't mean that we know the solution to all these problems that other people face. And, we've got enough of our own as well. So I think that's like the mindset that an organization that is trying to build a partnership as opposed to sort of a saviorship has to go into it with. And what that looks like is working sort of alongside these organizations and not enforcing particular solutions or ways of doing things, and actually like listening and learning a lot of the time. I think there's this expectation when you hear of volunteerism that you're going to be going and like putting some gloves on and like digging a well, or you're going to be like, or maybe there was, I don't know. People are really coming around, which is amazing. But the point being, a lot of the way that we can sort of help is just by listening and learning, and by sort of amplifying the work that's already being done by these organizations. And so it looks like not doing the same thing every time just for the sake of doing something. Like if a tree doesn't need to be planted this year, then we're not going to be planting a tree. We're going to take the leadership of organizations who know their sort of their solutions best. And it means that the relationship we have with those organizations is built on a whole bunch of trust. And that's definitely something that I didn't appreciate when I was sort of like a young person traveling, because I thought you could just like show up anywhere and hang out and meet some people and like automatically be like welcomed into the community, and like be like, hey, I'm here to help, or hey, I'm just here to hang out and travel. And so like, of course, you're gonna sort of let me in. But what I didn't appreciate is that when an organization has sort of this like long-standing relationship built on trust and sort of this mutual respect, you're really sort of welcomed in a way that you can't do sort of as an individual or as somebody who hasn't gained that trust and respect as an organization would have over time. So yeah, it's a lot of listening, a lot of learning, and a lot of time over the years to sort of establish a working relationship that works for both the visitors and the people who are in these places that we visit.
Yeah, and I think something that's really beautiful to note about that is like sometimes during an experience like that, you think you're not doing much, but you're doing so much by just being open, right? And that experience then comes home with you and you travel with it through your life. Like I know, like I was an OG leader, so obviously I have a very particular experience with this. But I remember watching my participants go from like feeling like I don't really know if I'm doing this, like I'm not doing much in destination. What is this? Like questioning a lot, and then coming home and really understanding the value of what they observed and what they learned and how to apply it to local issues, which I think is so powerful because like I believe one of you mentioned before, like we have so many of our own things going on at home. So I'm curious. So Marissa, what does that look like? So we have our own millions of other social justice and sustainability we need to focus on here in Canada. So what does that look like? How do we get Gappers engaged in that on the ground locally at home?
So a big thing that we do within Katimavik, a sentence that we use is ethical community engagement. So when we're in a community and partnering with volunteer organizations in that community, and working with people in that community, we're always intending to, I guess similar to what Lauren was saying, but like asking these folks, these communities, what do you need help with? And then providing resources to help with those things. Never coming into a community and saying, oh, we know what's best for you. Here, we're going to do this thing. We're going to start this project. So really, yeah, it's more about, if there's already a project started, helping with that. How can we facilitate that? We have a certain amount of resources. Maybe if it's not financial resources, we have our participants. They have their time that they can give. So really looking at how to use the resources that we have and furthering things that are already ongoing within those communities, instead of, again, very similar to what Lauren was saying in international volunteering opportunities, just looking at what you can do for the people that are already working within that area.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love it. And I love that we're looking at very similar kind of results and approaches from angles from like locally and abroad. And I'm curious, so thinking about like, so obviously with a volunteer experience, we want to make sure that it's still applicable to resume building on a gap year, because of course we want to be able to communicate the skills and the experience in a way that is going to impress the heck out of employers and admissions panels. So I'm curious, what are some of those kind of larger outcomes, would you say, of your programs that can basically apply to kind of that continued learning journey, that experiential journey, so that, you know, that gappers can actually kind of communicate how those skills can be applied in the workforce? I guess anyone can go first at this point. Popcorn style.
Awesome. Yeah. So in the format that Katimavik has for that 5.5-month program, the national experience, you're going to 2 separate communities and doing 30 hours of volunteer work a week within each community while you're there. So that volunteer work is with one organization the whole time. So the participants who are working with that organization obviously get like a very good feel for that, whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's at an animal rescue or maybe at a community garden, something more hands-on, something more in a donation center where they're working in the back doing sorting and like sorting furniture and clothing and that kind of stuff, or even working at a cash register. So whatever they're doing, obviously they're getting a very in-depth focus on it. And they do get to choose, their top 3 before they get placed with a placement. So hopefully they're doing something that they already have a bit of an interest in, and then they're getting to expand on that a bit further. So they're getting, a good feel of, oh, is this something that I do really enjoy? And then after the program, beyond doing that one time, they get to do it 2 times. So they get 2 of those in-depth experiences. And then, so after the program finishes, they have a nice kind of overview of what are some, perhaps some areas, some sectors that they might want to further go down a career path on. A lot of the participants that we have end up going back to communities that they were in to continue, instead of as a volunteer, but to continue working as an employee with certain organizations that they were partnered with, just because they loved it so much. They had a really good connection with them, and they found something that really like sparked, something that they want to do with their lives. So it's a nice way to kind of wet your feet, I guess you could say.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. And also I guess it gives that opportunity to kind of explore like multiple kind of interests. I think that's really important, because often we get so stuck in like, I'm going to just focus on this one thing, but a gap year is actually great to explore all the things. And I'm going to be talking about that more tomorrow, gappers, because it really is, because there's no really time in your life where you have the freedom to explore multiple things that you're interested and passionate about and dive deeper into them. And then having that hands-on experience is so important, just because then you can really know how to kind of apply the knowledge that you're learning to the real world, because that's why we chose the gap year path, right, kiddos? We're not going to college or university just for theory. We want to hands-on first before we dive into all of that. And Lauren, I'm curious, so how would you say kind of the program outcomes correlate to that kind of resume building for gappers?
For sure. I think like 7 million different ways, obviously, but it's the challenge is distilling it down into a way that you can sort of communicate with the general public. But I was thinking a lot about earlier when we were talking about sort of like, volunteerism and the impact and sort of this idea that we're going to sort of like go and help communities and there's going to be an impact on those communities. But I think a huge part of this, which we are all talking about now and what we all understand, is that like the whole point, not the whole point, but a huge part of the point of doing experiences like this is for you, the individual, and the impact that this is going to have on you and your life. And the cool part about all this is that like these programs and these experiences impact your life and change the trajectory of your life so that you can make change wherever you call home. And the way that sort of like we frame all of that out within our programs, and I think it just is like makes a lot of sense just generally in the world that we live in. But we sort of have like 3 pillars of education within each of our programs. There's cultural literacy as a component. There's power and privilege as a sort of pillar within it. And then there's like environmental justice as sort of a third guiding theme that all of our programs follow. And so through sort of like conversations and like activities and games and these interactions and these experiences that we're having with partners that we have on the ground, those 3 pillars of our curriculum, you could call it, sort of like come through in the way that we experience things. And having skills in any or all of those 3 things are just so critical to not only like existing, but really being comfortable and feeling good and sort of like feeling inspired in like the workplace, but mostly just the world in general. And so, you know, our programs all follow some sort of general theme of like, whether it be sort of animal conservation or like Mayan tradition and medicine or, you know, environmentalism. And so we have these like bigger themes that each of our programs follow, but because everything's all connected, we still sort of take a really holistic view of whatever it is that we're engaging in or learning about or doing, and sort of use those 3 pillars to like guide the conversations around the experience. So, you know, if we're doing a coffee program, obviously we're talking about coffee and we're talking about the supply chain, but the people who grow the coffee, you know, the environment that is changed by the sort of fields of coffee trees, you know, the small business and entrepreneurship that comes out of like micro lot growers and like specialty beans, like there's so many ways that all of this connects, and sort of having that experience and drawing from those experiences back home is not only very cool, but it's fun and it's super impressive, because then if you're working in like a business setting or you're like working for, I don't know, Starbucks or something, you can be like, I know where this came from. I know what the impact of this coffee bean is on somebody who lives in San Miguel, Guatemala, and this is what I want to do with this job that I have in Toronto because of the experience I had in Guatemala. And so it's like being able to draw those parallels across the world that are going to be so cool and also very impressive for everybody else who you're working with, to just be like, have all that knowledge and be able to connect it to something so much bigger than like you right now in a moment. So anyway, that was a bit of a ramble, but it's so hard to articulate how much programs like this can do for you. And I know it sucks having to explain it to people who don't get it because they've never done it or haven't had the opportunity to do it. But yeah, there's so much that comes out of it. It's hard to quantify or valorize.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love just the note that like everything is so interconnected. So like no matter where you are having this experience, like you will to relate it to something back home. You will be able to connect it to something that's happening at home. Oh, I think there's a lag. Am I frozen or is Lauren frozen? Oh, am I back? I couldn't tell if I was frozen or Lauren was. No, it's always me. The worst. Well, we're just at time, but Marissa, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'd love if you could just pop maybe a contact or best link in the chat. Go ahead and take a look right now. But of course, Gappers in our expo, both Katimavik and Operation Groundswell have booths in there. You can learn more. Both organizations, I believe, offer financial aid. Katimavik does offer financial aid, I believe, or is I can't remember the payment structure. But there's lots of opportunity there.
Yeah, it's a fully funded program, so no cost to participate.
So yeah, this is awesome. Of course, I know that we have non-Canadians in our Gapper community as well. I believe only for like the funding is only available for Canadian residents, but do check out what else is available for international students. We're on gap years, of course, Operation Groundswell over the world. So you can even participate in a program in your own country. How amazing would that be? So thank you everyone for coming out. Lauren, Marissa, thank you again so much for joining me so late on a Wednesday evening. We are also grateful for your time and to learn more about you and your amazing organizations.
Thanks, Jazz.
Thanks
everyone.
So much. Sorry, I just realized I put the wrong link. I'm going to put the right one now. But thank you so much. And yeah, anytime.